the species the galaxy couldn't predict. For thousands of years, the galaxy believed it understood intelligence. Every species followed patterns. The warrior species were aggressive and proud. The scientific species were logical and cautious. The trader species were opportunistic and calculating. Once a civilization joined the galactic community, its behavior became predictable. Statisticians could calculate their responses to nearly any situation: wars, diplomacy, trade, disputes, even everything could be modeled, everything be predicted, except species. When humanity first entered the galactic stage, they were considered insignificant. Their technology was average. Their military was small. Their planet was located in a quiet and unimportant sector of space. No one expected them to matter. At first, the Galactic Council barely noticed them. Humans were simply another young civilization joining the thousands already present in the galaxy. But within only a few decades, something strange began appearing in the Council's prediction models. Human behavior didn't follow patterns at all. Professor Tauren, one of the most respected strategic analysts in the galaxy, was the first to notice it. Tauren belonged to the virile species, tall, thin beings with 3 eyes and minds optimized for complex probability calculations. For centuries, the virile had been responsible for predicting galactic political outcomes. Their models were almost never wrong until humanity appeared. Tauren first encountered the anomaly while studying a minor trade conflict between 2 alien civilizations. The situation, simple. According to every model, the dispute should have escalated into a small war within 6 months. Instead, humans arrived, not with warships, but musicians, actual musicians. They organized a massive cultural festival between the 2 rival species. Thousands attended. Trade agreements were signed during the celebrations. The conflict disappeared. Tauren's prediction model collapsed. At first, the professor assumed it was a statistical anomaly. But then, again, and during a border war between 2 aggressive empires, humans sent volunteer medics to both sides. They saved thousands of soldiers from each army. The soldiers began refusing to fight near human medical camps. Soon, the battlefield turned into an unofficial ceasefire zone. Again, the war ended far earlier than expected. Tauren updated the prediction algorithms, but the results were worse. Human behavior introduced chaos into every simulation. Sometimes humans prevented wars. Sometimes they started them. Sometimes they joined conflicts that had nothing to do with them. Sometimes they ignored threats completely. No pattern existed. For the first time in centuries, the virile prediction systems failed. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of civilizations gathered inside the massive circular chamber orbiting the capital world of Arctavia. At the center of the room floated a holographic model of the galaxy. Red lights marked active conflicts. Trade routes glowed in blue, and human activity appeared everywhere. Ambassador Kelrix of the Torlan Empire spoke first. The Torlan were a powerful warrior species with thick armored skin and glowing yellow eyes. Kelrix slammed a clawed hand against the table. Humans interfere in matters that do not concern them, the ambassador growled. They disrupt conflicts that are none of their business. Another representative raised a tentacle, but they also prevent disasters. Kelrix hissed. That Professor Tauren stepped forward. The chamber quieted. When a virile analyst spoke, the council listened. Tauren activated a holographic projection. Thousands of branching timelines appeared in the air. These are our predictive simulations for the next 100 years, Tauren explained. Without human interference, we can forecast galactic stability with 98% accuracy. The professor paused, then added another variable: human activity. The timelines exploded into chaos. Possibilities multiplied wildly. Wars appeared and vanished. Alliances formed and collapsed. Entire political structures shifted unpredictably. Gasps filled the chamber. Kelrix leaned forward. "What are you saying?" Tauren slowly. For the first time in recorded history, the future of the galaxy cannot be predicted. Silence fell over the council chamber. Finally, one representative asked the obvious question. "Why?" Tauren a single image, a human, just an ordinary human soldier standing beside alien refugees. Because humans make decisions based on factors our models cannot calculate: emotion, empathy, curiosity, and sometimes Tauren hesitated. Pure stubbornness. The council erupted discussion, but none of them realized something far more important, something dangerous. While the galaxy struggled to understand humanity, a new threat had already begun moving toward them. From beyond the outer spiral arm of the galaxy, a species that destroyed civilizations without negotiation, without mercy, without warning. And when that threat finally arrived, the Galactic Council would discover a terrifying truth. The only species capable of defeating an unpredictable enemy was a species that could not be predicted at all. For nearly a century, the Galactic Council had debated humanity. Some species admired them, others trusted them, most simply didn't understand them. But those debates ended the moment the first outer colony went silent. The colony world Theraxis had been home to nearly 8 billion beings from 3 different civilizations. It was a thriving trade hub. Then one day, every signal stopped. No distress call, no warning, just silence. At first, the council assumed was a communication malfunction. A small patrol fleet was sent to investigate. None of the ships returned. Within weeks, more systems began going dark. Entire planets vanished from communication networks. Trade routes became graveyards of drifting wreckage. Then the first survivors arrived. A damaged cargo vessel limped into the Octavian capital system. Its hull was scorched, its engines barely functioning. Inside were only 12 survivors. They told a story that froze the entire Galactic Council in terror. The attackers were not pirates, not a rival empire, not even a known species. They were something new. Massive black ships that moved without visible engines. Weapons capable of slicing through entire fleets in seconds. And soldiers, creatures made of metal and living tissue combined. The survivors gave the invaders a name, because wherever they went, life appeared. Within months, the invasion accelerated. Entire civilizations fell. The strongest military empires of the galaxy mobilized their fleets. They lasted weeks. The Null ships were faster, stronger, more advanced. They adapted to enemy tactics almost instantly. Every battle ended the same way: total annihilation. Panic spread across the Galactic Council. Emergency alliances were formed. Ancient rivalries were temporarily forgotten. But it wasn't enough. Every defensive line collapsed. One by one, the great empires of the galaxy fell back toward the galactic core. The invasion reached the edge of human-controlled space. The first battle involving humanity happened at the Ryden system. A coalition fleet of 12 alien civilizations gathered there to stop the advancing Null armada. Among the hundreds of ships were only 7 human vessels. 7, compared to thousands of alien warships. Admiral Soraya Malik commanded the human fleet. When the council representatives saw the size of her force, they were confused. The Null armada approaching the system contained over 3,000 warships. The coalition fleet prepared carefully organized defensive formations. Energy shields layered across the system. Precise firing grids. Perfect coordination. Everything followed centuries of proven military strategy. The humans, all of it. Admiral Malik's ships drifted far outside the formation. Observers assumed they were inexperienced, or simply afraid. Then the Null fleet arrived. Dark shapes appeared from hyperspace. Thousands of them. The battle began instantly. Coalition ships fired massive energy weapons. Entire sections of the Null fleet exploded. For a brief moment, hope then adapted. Their ships shifted formation. Energy shields changed frequency. The coalition weapons stopped working. Within minutes, the Null counterattack began. Alien warships were sliced apart by beams of silent black light. Fleet formations collapsed. Panic spread. The battle into chaos. Admiral Malik watched quietly from the bridge of the human flagship. Her officers waited for orders. Finally, she spoke. Release the drones. Thousands of small human craft launched from hidden compartments inside the 7 ships. Alien commanders were confused. The drones, tiny, Weak, barely armed, they rushed toward the Null fleet in massive swarms. The Null weapons destroyed thousands instantly, but more coming. Millions of drones flooded the battlefield. They attached themselves to Null ships, exploded, released clouds of strange particles. At first, nothing to happen. Then, impossible occurred. The Null ships began colliding with each other. Their formations broke apart. Some ships fired at their own allies. Others spun wildly out of control. Coalition commanders stared at their sensors in disbelief. What did the humans do? Admiral Malik answered calmly over the open channel. The Null war machines relied on perfect coordination between ships. Human drones had released a specialized electronic virus, not powerful enough to destroy the ships, but enough to scramble their communication systems. For the time in the war, the Null fleet lost organization, and when perfect machines became confused, they made mistakes. The coalition attacked. Dozens of Null ships were destroyed. The rest retreated. It was the first victory anyone had achieved against the invaders. Across the galaxy, hope returned. But the Null had learned something as well. Among the thousands of species in the galaxy, only one had discovered a way to disrupt them. And that made Earth the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. Within weeks, the Null Armada changed direction. Their next target was obvious: Earth. The warning reached Earth months before the invasion fleet arrived. By then, humanity already knew the truth. The Null were unstoppable in conventional warfare. Every species that fought them directly had lost. Even the victory at Ryden had only delayed the inevitable. But humans didn't plan to fight the Null the way everyone else had. They planned something different, something no predictive model could ever calculate. Deep beneath Pacific Ocean, inside a massive hidden research facility, human scientists worked on a project that had been secretly developing for decades. It was not a weapon. Not exactly. It was an idea. A dangerous one. For years, human engineers had studied captured alien technology, especially artificial intelligence systems. They had discovered something fascinating. The Null were not a species. They were every ship, every soldier, every weapon, all controlled by a single massive intelligence, a galaxy-spanning machine mind. And like any intelligence, it could learn. But that also meant something else. It could be overwhelmed. Human scientists called the plan Project Paradox. If the Null mind relied on logic and prediction, then humans would attack it with something impossible to predict: human thought itself. Millions of volunteers connected their brains to a massive quantum communication system. Scientists weren't entirely sure what would happen, but they knew one thing: human imagination, chaotic, emotional, contradictory. If those thoughts were transmitted directly into the Null network, the result might be catastrophic, or it might destroy every human mind involved. No one knew. Still, the volunteers arrived. Students, scientists, ordinary people, millions of them. They all had the same answer when asked why they joined: because it has to. The Null fleet arrived above Earth 6 months later. Thousands of black warships filled the sky. Cities across the planet watched the invasion in silence. Then humanity activated Project Paradox. A massive signal shot into space, straight into the heart of the Null network. Inside the machine intelligence, something unprecedented occurred. Human thoughts flooded the system. Billions of emotions. Music, fear, love, hope. The Null mind attempted to process the data, but human thought patterns were irrational, contradictory, unpredictable. The system tried to categorize them. Tried again, failed again. The machine intelligence began overloading. Across the invasion fleet, ships started shutting down, weapons deactivated, navigation systems collapsed. Some ships simply powered off. Others drifted helplessly in orbit. Within hours, the entire armada went silent. The Null had not been destroyed. They had been confused into paralysis. The galaxy watched in disbelief. A threat that had defeated the greatest civilizations in history had been stopped by something no military strategist could design: human imagination, human unpredictability. Months later, the Galactic Council gathered again. Professor Tauren stood before them once more. The prediction models were running again, but had changed. Humanity had become a permanent variable in every calculation. Tauren spoke quietly. "We once believed the galaxy could be predicted." The professor around the chamber. That belief. One council member asked the final question. "So what does the future like now?" Tauren smiled slightly. "No one." Across the galaxy, billions of beings began studying humanity, trying to understand them, trying to predict them, but they would never succeed, because the one made humanity powerful was the one thing no model could calculate: the human ability to do the unexpected. And as long as existed, the future of the galaxy would never be predictable again.